My name is Daniel Wallershofer. I'm the scientific director of the laboratory your genetic test was performed in, and I would like to take some time to go through your genetic test with you. So I would like to ask you to take your report, no matter if it's a hard copy or a digital copy, and then we're just going to start from page number 1. I'm going to have a digital copy of a report on my screen, and then we would just go through it step by step. And this should ensure that you understand everything correctly and that you also know how to use the report, because there's no use in knowing a lot about your genetic information if you don't know how to use this information to your benefit. All right. By the way, do take note that this might be a slightly older video by the time you're watching it, and we continue improving our reports. So there might be some differences between what I have on my screen and what you have in your booklet. So don't worry if there are some differences. I will explain the general concept, and I'm sure that you're going to understand what I'm trying to say, even if there are minor differences. And also, there are different versions of this report. So some are specifically tailored for sports studios, some are specifically tailored for use with doctors. So there might also be minor differences, but then again, this video is going to help you understand all of the aspects of the analysis. All right, so the whole thing starts with the cover letter. Here you're just going to find out some information of when the genetic sample has arrived at the laboratory, when we've performed it, and you also find my signature releasing the results for report creation. And on the next page, you just have a table of content, and then we start here. So let me enlarge this a little bit. I would really recommend that you read through this once. It's very easy to understand. I'm sure you're going to find it interesting. But let me just quickly summarize what you find in this section. The human body consists of around 50 trillion individual cells. And every one of those cells, with some minor exceptions, has a cell nucleus. And in the cell nucleus there are the human chromosomes, and these are these X shapes that you see here. And if you take a closer look at a chromosome, you find that it is in fact a very tightly wound thread. And this thread is the DNA double helix. And this is this helix structure that you see. Now, if you look at the helix in more detail, you actually see genetic letters. In reality, these are not really letters, but certain chemical structures that are there, but scientists abbreviate them in genetic letters, the A, T, G, and C. And those are the 4 different letters that our genetic code is made up of. And this is incredibly much information. For example, if I were to read out the genetic code ATGACGG in this speed of just one single cell, then it would take me 100 years to complete it. And this is just one cell, and as we've said, you have 50 trillion individual cells. So it's incredibly much information. All right, now what are genes? Genes are certain regions in this genetic code, and a gene contains an instruction. It's an instruction to your body of how to do something. For example, the lactase gene, the LCT, that's the abbreviation. This gene means that in this genetic code, there is the instruction for your body how to produce an enzyme. An enzyme is kind of a small scissors that can digest something. And this gene has the genetic information of how to build this enzyme and how to digest lactose. Lactose is a milk sugar. There's another gene, the thrombosis gene, factor 5. This just means that this gene here contains the information of how to prevent thrombosis, a blood clot from forming in your arteries when this shouldn't be the case. So there's a gene that has a certain function, and another gene has another function. And most genes mostly only have one function, some have a few, but this is pretty much how the instructions of your human body look like. And there are around 25 to 30,000 different such genes, and there are different versions of each gene. So there's a blue version of an eye color gene and a green version, and so on. And this is the general concept of how the human blueprint of how to build a body is structured. Now, the next question is, what is a genetic variation? if you were to take my factor V gene and that of any other random person, and you put them next to each other, you would find that the code is almost identical. There are only going to be very few situations, very few positions where there might be one letter change. So the genes, virtually all humans have exactly the same factor V gene, but some have one letter in one position and some people have another genetic letter. And these are the genetic variations called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. So we don't actually need to look at the whole gene because the genetic variations are usually the only part where there is a difference from one person to the next. So if we look at a certain letter here, it might be that if there's an A here, that means the gene works normally. And if there's a G, it's a kind of genetic error, then the gene has lost its function. It forgot the instruction that it should encode. So what we can do is we look at a specific genetic variation and we know if there's an A here, then you don't have an increased risk of thrombosis, and if there's a G here, then you do because the gene does not function correctly. And that's the general concept of genetics. Again, there's more information in here. If you're interested, do read through it. It's an interesting read in my opinion. So as this program is structured in such a way that you can use genetics to improve weight loss or use genetics to eat healthy or do both, there are different sections in the report depending on what you've ordered. So this here is a nutrition sensor part. So this is the eating healthy part to make sure your body gets the right nutrients. And this is useful for prevention, so to prevent certain metabolic problems to develop, and for treatment. So if you have certain metabolic problems, or you might even be a diabetic or something, if you mentioned that in the order form, the nutrition will be adapted to make sure you get the right nutrients that are necessary for your affliction. So it's meant to help you stay healthy and to improve your health if you already have some metabolic problems or disease problems. Now this page here is going to explain a little bit about nutrigenetics, how genes are going to influence one person differently than others. Because the general assumption that eating healthy is the same for everybody, you should eat lots of fruit and low fat and low sugar, this is just too simple, unfortunately. Because for some people, for example, milk products are a very healthy source of calcium. So for them it's good to eat milk products because they get a lot of calcium. Other people might be genetically lactose intolerant, so they can't drink milk or eat milk products. So for them this is not true, because if they eat milk products they're going to have very, very bad digestive problems. So this is just one example, one gene, and here we're testing more than 50 genes, more than 20 different metabolic problems that arise through this, and each one of them has different nutritional needs that might vary from one person to the next. And this is the concept of nutrigenetics. We test your genes, find out what your personal needs are, what you should avoid, and then we make a list of types of food where we tell you this is good for you to eat and this is bad for you to eat. And by just following, eating more of the good stuff, eating less of the bad stuff, you will do the best you can to supply your body with exactly the nutrients that it needs, and you avoid substances that it really can't work with. Now, detoxification is an interesting concept. Basically, there are a number of different toxins, toxic chemicals and stuff in our environment that can reach our body, that can get into our body. And nature knows about this. So we have a number of systems, a number of genes that can recognize these toxins, neutralize them and remove them from the body. And as you can guess, it's genes that are doing this, that are regulating this. And some people have variations in some of these genes, which means that they cannot neutralize some of the toxins, while other people can. So there are big differences in how people respond to certain toxic chemicals and stuff. All right, let's look at your results. So Again, on this page you will find some general information to read through it. And here is phase 1 detoxification. And this is all about ash, soot, smoke and burnt things. So, as you know, smoking increases your risk of lung cancer. That is because some of these smoke contents are carcinogenic. They're cancer causing. And they reach our body, and then a certain enzyme system, genes, indirectly genes recognize them, these toxins, these carcinogens, they neutralize them and remove them. So we have a protection from this cancer-causing substance that reaches our body. So these two genes here are responsible for this detoxification. So I smoke a cigarette, the toxin gets into my body, these two genes recognize the toxin and neutralizes it and prevents it from giving me cancer. In this case, both of the genes have a high odds ratio, meaning that they are defective and they increase the risk. So we have two genes that give me a risk. This one 2.4-fold and 3.4-fold. So we have around 5 to 6-fold higher risk of bad health effects from these toxins that are present in smoke, in ash, in burnt food and so on. So barbecued food also is much more of a problem for a person with this result because you see here the phase 1 detoxification is very ineffective. And it might also be very effective, so in this case it's not so much of a problem. It still doesn't mean you should smoke. It's still dangerous, still likely to significantly shorten your lifespan, but for this person it's 5 to 6 times worse, more problematic than for many other people. So in case you are a smoker, and I hope you're not, in case you're a smoker and you're here in this area, then you really should reconsider your habits, because it's 5 times more dangerous, more problematic for you than for many other people. So it's much more dangerous for your health than it might be for many others. This also explains why sometimes some people smoke for 5 years and develop lung cancer, and others smoke until they're 80 years old and never develop lung cancer, just because their bodies respond differently to these cancer-causing substances. Alright, so do check your own results. If you're here, it means barbecued food is generally, it's not very healthy, but it's not so much of a problem if you have some charred or blackened parts of the meat. You shouldn't eat burnt food anyhow. However, if you're here, it's a lot less healthy for you, and you should really try to cook food in such a way that it's not getting charred or black. So this is the first step. This just tells you barbecue concept, yes or no. The second phase, phase 2 detoxifications, is a lot more interesting. I'm sure you're aware of this trend of organic food, meaning that the food was grown without any chemicals, without pesticides, herbicides and so on. Now some people say this is very healthy because all of these chemicals are unhealthy for you. Other people say they don't matter, they've been tested, they are not dangerous. And in a way, both of them are right, because phase 2 detoxification, and let me zoom in here, these 3 genes are responsible for phase 2 detoxification. And this means if I eat some vegetables that have a lot of herbicides in them, then the vegetables are going to contain these substances, they're going to reach my body. And then there are these 3 genes which produce enzymes which recognize it, neutralize it and remove it. So it's not a problem. Same goes for industrial solvents and things like that. For other people, however, they might not have some of these genes active. And in this case, the herbicide reaches the body, it's not recognized, it's not removed, and it can do its damage. So for some people, absolutely it is a problem because they cannot neutralize the toxins that reach the body. For other people, it's less of a problem. It's probably still not healthy, but it's definitely not such a big health risk and health issue than for other people. Now, let me just quickly talk you through the results here. Here you see null allele, which you might be interested in. You see here we have a catalog number, the RS number for the genetic variation, where 1 letter change is happening. But here, the null allele is something different. We don't know why, but some people don't just have a genetic variation that breaks the gene, but they actually miss the whole gene. The whole gene is gone. And that is called a null allele, allele being one copy of a gene. So you can have two missing copies of the gene, you can have one copy and one missing copy, or you can have two copies of it. And in this case, this is the optimal genetic result. Do check what your result is. And you see here the effectiveness of phase 2 detoxification is very effective. It might also be very ineffective or somewhere in between. Now, if you're in the effective area, then organic food might still be a good idea. But it's not going to be so critical for you. If you're here, I would really make sure that I eat organically. Try to avoid any kind of substances, fertilizers that might contain substances that could harm your body. Now the same goes for heavy metals. Lead, for example, is a heavy metal that's very unhealthy. Some people get heavy lead detoxification. And the same goes for cadmium and mercury. And these substances, for one thing, accumulate in some certain types of food, like shellfish. Shellfish are filter feeders, they filter water through, and they accumulate high levels of toxic heavy metals. Now, it's not a problem for many people because the genes recognize them and remove the heavy metals. For other people, they can't remove them. They might accumulate in the body and start damaging the person's health. So depending on your results here, we're going to see if shellfish or fish, generally fish grown in fish farms in the sea, are also more polluted with heavy metals. These might be less recommended to you based on your detoxification capacity, while it might be very healthy for other people. So just for fish, we already have two things now. So omega-3 content, good or not, and also the content of pollutants that are common in these fish. All right, so do check your results. Ineffective means more organic food, less fish, less shellfish, and here all of this is not so much of a problem. Okay, so that's phase 2 detoxification. Then we have oxidative stress, and you will likely have heard of this before. Oxidative stress is a byproduct of converting energy in our body. When we use oxygen, we need oxygen to convert energy and do something with it, run our body. And the byproducts of this metabolism are free radicals, and they are kind of small toxic molecules that are created, and they then grab onto something and break it, and this grabs onto something else and breaks it, and this grabs onto something else. So it's a sort of chain reaction of damage until an antioxidant, it's a free radical inhibitor or a free radical catcher, you could say, comes along and grabs it and stops this chain reaction. And this happens throughout our body in many different ways. There are lots of different types of free radicals, and they damage our tissue. And they have something to do with aging of the skin and just getting older. They are one of the main parts that are involved in this. So free radicals, they continuously are produced, and they damage the tissues, and eventually the damage accumulates and the skin begins to sag, and you become more prone to disease. Now, since nature knew that this genetic variation is so dangerous, that these free radicals are so detrimental to health, we have a number of safeguards, and these genes here have these roles. So these genes protect us in different ways from these free radical inhibitors, from these free radicals. All right, so you can read through this as we'll explain it in a bit more detail. And now let's look at the scale bars, which is the important thing. So generally, your oxidative stress, how well you are protected from these age-promoting free radicals. Normal means good protection, your genes are working, they're protecting you. increased means your genes, at least some, if not all of the genes, are disabled through some of the genetic variations, and you don't have the protection that other people would have from these free radicals. Then the recommended dose of antioxidants. I said these free radicals do their damage until an antioxidant, a radical inhibitor, comes along and grabs onto it and neutralizes it. Now, these antioxidants, free radical inhibitors, are vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin A, alpha-lipoic acid, and some other substances. So many of the typical vitamins that you've heard about, that they're healthy, some of their roles are to neutralize free radicals. So on the one hand, you have genes that might protect you, but they might be broken. And on the other hand, you have these vitamins that can protect you. And if the genes are broken, you're going to need more vitamins to counteract this lacking protection. And that's the basic concept. We test your stress, how good your genes are. If they're good, you need a few vitamins. If they're bad, because they're all broken, you lack this protection. And then we're going to get different types of food that contain a lot of these vitamins, and we're going to recommend them more to you in your nutrition plan, because the containing antioxidants, the vitamins, are very important for you to remain healthy. So again, your genes tell us how important some substances in some foods are for you. All right, the next question, coenzyme Q10 and ubiquinol. This is a very interesting story. If you're into skin creams, you might have realized that some skin creams use coenzyme Q10 as a component, because coenzyme Q10 has the potential to be converted to ubiquinol. So coenzyme Q10 is not active, but ubiquinol, the active form, can neutralize free radicals and slow aging. That's the concept. And that's why it is in skin cream and in all sorts of beauty products. Some people also take it as a nutritional supplement, so a gelatin or a pill, and it's swallowed, it reaches the body, it's converted to ubiquinol and protects you from oxidative stress. However, as I said, you need to convert it, because Q10 by itself is not active. And there is a gene that produces an enzyme, scissors kind of, that recognize Q10, modify it, and then you get ubiquinol. And this ubiquinol is inactive. So Q10 itself is inactive. And you might have guessed it, there is a genetic variation that disables the enzyme. So what happens is, I take Q10, it reaches my body, there are no scissors, no enzymes modifying it, there's no action. And I take it every day because I want a lot of protection from oxidative stress, and it's a very expensive supplement as well. And instead of benefiting from it, I lack this function, and it's not active in me. So there are two ways of what you can do in this case. You can either already take the activated form, ubiquinol, or you can counteract it with all of the other antioxidants, vitamin C, E, A, and all of these substances. So if you take more of them, you can partly balance out that you're lacking this function. So here you're going to find out if your body is able to activate coenzyme Q10 to ubiquinol. If it's possible, coenzyme Q10 is going to be active in you, it's going to help you. If it's here, then it's useless. Then some of you will now probably find out that you've taken coenzyme Q10 for years and you cannot process it, and it will result in nothing. And here you see the recommended antioxidant substance, coenzyme Q10, or alternative vitamins, depending on where you are. And again, we can take this information, we find out you need more vitamins or not, and then we choose which type of food to recommend to you. And then selenium, that's also a very interesting story. Selenium is a trace element that is contained within food. And there is a gene, the GPX1 gene. Actually, let me scroll up here and show you this gene. The GPX1 gene is this one here. This gene protects you from free radicals as well. And it works like this. The gene has instructions for an enzyme that has the function to float around and grab onto free radicals and neutralize them. However, for this enzyme to work, it needs selenium. Selenium is an integral part of how to build this thing, one of the building blocks. So, if a person is selenium deficient, has too little selenium through poor nutrition, they are going to produce the enzyme, but it's not going to work. And only some of them will work, and the action, the function of this protective enzyme is very low. That is why it's unhealthy to be selenium deficient, one of the reasons. If you then increase the amount of selenium through healthy nutrition or maybe supplements with selenium, you can recover this function, because the new enzymes that are being built correctly, and they can do this function, and they protect you from these free radicals. Now, there is a genetic variation that's not uncommon that messed up the building instruction for this enzyme. So it's still building it kind of correctly, but it's slightly modified. So it grabs onto free radicals less efficiently. So even with normal selenium status, this doesn't work very well. So you have a lower protection from free radicals because of this genetic variation. And now the interesting thing is, scientific studies have found out if you increase the amount of selenium to far above normal levels, you can rescue the function of many of these, and then you can increase the protection again. So, and this is a very interesting point. Some people say, why do you do a genetic test to find out how much selenium a person needs? Why not do a blood test? Check out if they are in a healthy range. If yes, fine. If not, give them more selenium. But that's exactly the point. If the gene works normally, which you can only test through genetics, the normal range is okay. But if the gene has the genetic variation, you need much more, so much higher than the normal range, to achieve the same result. So through genetics, we know you should be in the high range and you should be in the low range, while a blood test would say this is the healthy range, which we try to put everyone into, and we try to adjust everyone to be in the healthy range. So really there are some things which blood tests can do, which genetics can't, like see if there's a deficiency. Genetics has no chance of doing this, but genetics has the option of finding out how much you should really have, because not everybody's requirement is the same as we see in this gene. So by looking at this gene, we know your requirement of selenium. If it's increased, like in this example, it means your genes are modified. It's less effective, and you can rescue some of the function with more selenium. And if you're here in the normal range, the normal amount of selenium is completely sufficient for you. So again, what we do is we look at this, we find out how high your requirement of selenium is, and then we evaluate every one of the 1,000 different types of food, and we can find out this has a lot of selenium, you need a lot of selenium, so we're going to recommend this type of food more. Alright, so by testing more than 50 genes, we now know the different tendencies that you have, different metabolic problems that might occur from these genetic variations, and we know what sort of substances in food might be beneficial for your health, which ones might be detrimental to your health, and we can tell this is good or this is bad for you. And here is a summary. So again, do read through this. It just explains about food ingredients. Now there are a number of good and bad substances in food that we're evaluating here. So if you check this page here, total fat. A lot of fat is generally bad for people. But for some people it's moderately bad, for some it's extremely bad because of genetic variation. They just respond to it more, and they have more negative health effects from it. So do check where your arrow is. In this case it's very unfavorable. Saturated fatty acids, that's the unhealthy type of fat, so unfavorable. Cholesterol, also unfavorable in this case. Total sugar, so lots of sugar and high calories from sugars is also bad for this person. Glycemic index is not so bad. Glycemic index is how fast the sugar goes into your bloodstream, and it might increase it a lot or a lot and very quickly, so it spikes, which is bad for some metabolic problems, and should be avoided for some genetic types, and it's not so much of a problem for some other genetic types. So having a high glycemic index is not so much of a problem here. It might be much much worse for you. Sodium, that's table salt. For some people it's normal, for others it's very unhealthy. The amino acids cysteine and methionine, in this case, are very unfavorable, might be different again in your case. Then phosphorus, which is in chocolate and in meat products, sausages and so on, is moderately unfavorable. Arachidonic acid, this is something in animal products. It increases the inflammation response of the body, is moderately bad. It might be very bad for you or normal. Alpha-linoleic acid and EPA, they are omega-3 fatty acids. They are for some people favorable, for some medium, and for some unfavorable. So it's unfavorable in this case. And alcohol is very unfavorable. Coffee, favorable in this case. It can have a protective effect as well. It has a lot of antioxidants, so for some people it's good. And purines again is moderately unfavorable. Now this is just some background information. These are the typical substances in food that are bad for you. Very bad for some, moderately bad for others, and some of them are good for you. And then there are also the micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals and so on. And through your genetics we can find out how your body responds to many of these vitamins and minerals, and what dosage we would recommend based on your genetics in order to ensure that everything is working all right. You remember the GPX1 gene, it needs more selenium, so we would recommend more selenium in your diet if you have the genetic variation, and normal amounts if you don't. So here again is information about micronutrients, and here you see some scales, and you see your requirement of vitamin A. So it's actually quite high in this case. Vitamin B6 is moderate, vitamin C is a little higher, vitamin E is same, calcium is lower, iron is quite lower, and so on. So all of these vitamins and minerals that are contained within food and different food types are evaluated here. And we can tell you which amount we would recommend based on your genetics. Also coenzyme Q10, which we've talked about, it works in this case, that's why some of it is recommended, and omega-3 fatty acids in this case would not be recommended, but phytosterols, which is an alternative, is recommended. So this here, this table, shows you the recommended daily allowance. Now there are some agencies that try to make recommendations that are applicable to everyone, men and women, children, babies, and they said a person should eat 200 micrograms of folic acid, applicable to everybody, and calcium 800 milligrams, and so on. So they did their best to try to find out what is the general healthy nutrition, and they did a good job in this respect. But only through looking at genetics we can see individual differences. And that is why your actual requirement, based on our recommendation, based on your genetics, is deviating from the normal amount. So here you see omega-3 fatty acids. We would actually, in this case, not recommend them because they have a negative effect in some respects. And we would recommend phytosterols instead, and so on. So you will find your requirement actually will differ from the actual requirement. And the best effect, the best way to cover your requirement is to optimize your nutrition. So getting micronutrients from nutrition is always the best approach. So this is what the program is supposed to do. It is trying to find out how much you need, which type of foods should you eat to cover these requirements, and then you should follow the list and eat the stuff that is recommended and avoid the ones that we don't recommend, and that will then help you to get the right nutrition. And here you see some scientific references that this is built on. Everything is very strongly scientifically based because we're a medical laboratory. We do work with medical genetic standards, so every claim that we make must have a number of scientific studies supporting the same thing. So here you see the scientific studies. In case you're interested, it's heavy reading. You might need a degree in genetics or medicine to understand some of it, but in case you're interested, you can look them up on the internet and find those publications. Okay, now let's talk about the food table, which is probably the most important or most interesting part of your genetic test. This genetic test is modular, so you have the chance to say, I just want to lose weight, or I just want to know what is healthy for me, or both of it together. So depending on which genetic test that you've ordered, you might see a slightly different type of food table here. In this example, both of the things were ordered, so I can explain all of the aspects of the table. So don't worry if you sometimes see a question mark instead of a result here. That's just because this part was not ordered and has not been genetically tested. All right, so now let's look at the food table. I'm going to jump over this. You can read up on it in case you're interested. I'm going to explain it on the live table. So let me just find a good page. Go for this one and zoom in. So first of all, here you have different categories: baked goods, cakes, and confectionery. So here are the different types of food that all belong in this category. And for one thing, what is important for the weight management aspect, in case you have ordered this, you will see these bars here. And these bars and these numbers will likely be different for you because it's based on your genes. They're all personalized. So what we find here is that apple strudel is as I've explained, something that has less weight gaining potential than waffles would do. So what the person can eat 60 grams of apple strudel to have the same weight gain effect as 15 grams of waffles. So what does this tell you? It tells you eat more apple strudel and less waffles if you have the choice. Both taste maybe the same to you, then you can choose the ones that are better for your genes. Some people say looking at these gram numbers is too complicated. They just say I only eat things in the green area and I avoid the ones in red. Or they might say red only on Sundays, otherwise just green food. There's a very easy way to adapt your nutrition. It has the benefit of teaching you what type of food is good for you and you like, and which ones you should avoid. So this is for the weight management aspect. So go for more of the green stuff and less of the red stuff. Also for the weight management stuff, when you look through your table, you will have found something that looks like this. Any amount, no item. This means that the calories contained within this food are so insignificant, so small, that it doesn't really matter how much you eat of it. This means in case you're ever hungry and you don't have any more food to eat because you've used up all of your items, then you can just look out for these and eat as much as you want. So for different categories, in some cases you're going to see this quite a lot. So here, for example, all different types of salad and so on. So any amount, no item is a good intermediate snack in case you don't want to gain weight. Now this here shows you the main calorie containing substances. So for example, going for spinach. Spinach, generally a general portion of spinach is 150 grams. And 150 grams of spinach contain 29 kilocalories, so very, very low amount. That's why it's also a no item. Any amount, you can eat that whenever in between. So 29 kilocalories, 4 grams of protein, 1 gram of carbohydrates, and 0 grams of fat. So these are the important calorie containing substances. So just in case you're interested. And if you're not, as long as you just look at these bars, that's sufficient for your weight loss program. Okay, in case you have an allergy and you gave us this information at the time of ordering the report, things like nut allergy, you would see a warning in this area here. So it says allergy and it might show a warning sign. This just means this type of food might contain or is likely to contain the substance that you have told us you are allergic to. We don't find out any allergies from genetics. The genetics of allergy is just not understood enough, and we don't know how to determine if you are going to be allergic to something based on a genetic test. So we're limited with the possibilities here. But if you knew that you're not allergic, then we could enter this information and it will give you a warning. It does not mean this is a foolproof list. It just means it's supposed to help you decide and warn you, be careful, it might be that there is something that you're allergic to. It's ultimately your responsibility to check every type of food if it contains the allergens that you should avoid. So it's just a help, but don't depend on it too much. Then that's the weight management aspect. Now for the healthy food aspect, this part here is more important. So in the first aspect we look at how much fat, carbohydrates does this contain, and what is the weight gain potential for you. And here we look at from all of the ingredients that the food has. Some of them might be good for you based on your genes, some of them might be bad for you based on your genes, and if there's more good stuff in it, it's going to be more recommended. If it's got more bad stuff in it, it's going to be less recommended to you. And the mode of recommendation is with smiley faces, so it's very easy to understand. 6 happy smiley faces is the best you can have. It just means that vegetable mix in general is very healthy for you. It contains a lot of vitamins, minerals that you require in a higher amount based on your genetics, and it contains very few problems, very few substances that are a problem for your health. 1 smiley face is less healthy than 6 smiley faces. Then there are neutral faces, these black ones, iceberg lettuce for example. It means it contains some negative stuff, but also some good stuff, and they kind of balance each other out, so it's neither good nor bad for you to eat this. And then there is 1 red smiley face. That means more bad stuff in it than good things, and it goes up to 7 unhappy faces. So, for example, some beans might be very healthy, but chickpeas are very unhealthy due to some substances that they contain more. Soybeans are not so good, green peas are better. So there are really big differences from the same category of food based on more than 40 different ingredients or components that this food is made of. And over here, you can see the components. So this is just the most important ones, but things like glycemic index, how much lactose is included, how much calcium, how much iron, how much zinc, and so on. So different vitamins and so on. And we look at all of these aspects. We look at your genes. We say you have a high risk of a certain metabolic problem. To counteract this, you need a lot of folic acid. How much folic acid is in this type of food? Is there anything else that might be bad? And this way we evaluate every one of these types of food independently by looking at all of it together. It's not just saying fruit is healthy, so eat fruit. It's just too simple. All right, and if we look at this table in a bit more detail, you see that some numbers are green, some are black, and some are red. Now, these numbers are the same for everyone, so they are not personalized to your genes. It just means that red means it's a bad substance, so sodium, for example. So this type of food contains a lot of sodium, more than others, that's why it's red. So the ones that contain most are red, if it's bad, and the ones that contain most of something good are green. So any green number means this is particularly rich in folic acid, and this is particularly rich in sodium. It might help you to get a little insight into why something might be less healthy or more healthy for you. However, as I said, it's a very complicated thing. Every one of these types of food has at least 500 different calculations being done and different factors being considered, and overall if it's beneficial or bad for you is considered in this. So this is for people that are really interested in how much of each of these substances is contained within, but you don't need to know the deeper workings of how it works. for you to use it, really just eat more of the green smileys, eat less of the red smileys and the unhappy faces. And sometimes you might even see in meat, all of it is bad, but some of it has six red smileys, unhappy faces, and some of it has 2. So you should just prefer the ones with less unhappy faces. And you should generally eat less of the stuff that is red and more of the stuff that is green. It doesn't mean you can never eat anything with red, but make it an exception rather than the rule. And for weight management, as I said, just look at the bars, maybe use the grams per item. It might be ounces per item, depending on where you're located. And here is one more aspect. You see lactose and gluten as well as caution. And this means if, for example, you are genetically predisposed to be lactose intolerant, then it doesn't mean you are lactose intolerant, it just means you are likely to develop lactose intolerant symptoms at some point in your life. It also does not mean you should stop eating lactose containing milk products unless you have symptoms. So there's no need to stop eating them. It just means you might have a warning sign here sometimes. You can eat this type of food, but if you ever get a bad reaction, remember, check out if you have a warning here. If yes, then it's likely that you have developed a food intolerance that you had a genetic predisposition to. The same goes for gluten. So you can continue eating it if there's a warning sign, but if you realize you have a bad reaction, then avoid everything with the warning. It's as simple as that. This will help you deal with lactose intolerance and gluten intolerance in a very simple way. It's similar with the caution. So if you have a caution sign in here, it just means you can eat this type of food, but it might at some point cause problems. So just look out for it, and if you ever get a bad reaction, avoid everything that has a caution sign. It's as simple as that. So it really helps you avoid any type of food that is bad for you or that might cause digestive problems. All right, and this here at the end is quite technical. In case you're interested, otherwise you can skip this last part. This is just some information about our certifications. Now, what sets us apart from many other suppliers of genetic testing is that we have our own in-house laboratory. So we run our own laboratory, our own processes, and we put a very high focus on high quality documentation, high certifications. So we have lots of external bodies coming in and auditing us, auditing our data protection system, auditing our quality management system and so on. And we also want to have control over the turnaround times as well as a very high level of automation. If you're interested, there are videos on the internet showing the level of automation, that all of our processes are done by robots and machines to avoid human errors and improve throughput. But here I'm just quickly going to walk you through the certifications that we have in our laboratory. So for one thing, this here is from the Austrian state. And many countries have genetic testing laws, which are meant to protect consumers from discrimination against genetics and so on. And they are in a different form in different countries. And as far as I'm aware, Austria in Europe has the most strict genetic testing laws that I'm aware of. So we have the license to perform medical genetic testing issued by the Austrian government. So they came, they audited the laboratory, they do this in regular cases, and it's a very, very strict process of obtaining this license to perform medical genetic tests. So this is the first certification that we have. Then in addition, this will be compulsory to have a laboratory in Austria. It's also a quality sign compared to other countries where you could do it without any kind of certification. So this is one of the steps. Then the optional certification, the ISO 15189 certification, is the highest level of quality certification you can have for a medical laboratory. So it looks at quality control, checking for errors, validation of all processes and so on. And this certification applies to lifestyle analyses for weight management and healthy nutrition, as well as for medical interpretation and genetic analysis. And the company and office is ISO 9001 certified. This is all about document control, continual improvement, and so on. Then some of the medical genetic analyses are covered not by 15189, but by ISO 17025. It's similar to the ISO 15189, but yet again slightly different. So all processes are highly certified, audited not only by us, by our own quality management team, but also by some of the companies we supply, as well as government bodies and official certification institutions. And this here just shows the technical details. So your order number, date of birth, the analyzing laboratory address. It shows my signature again for releasing your genetic results, because every genetic result needs to be looked at by 3 people, 2 different scientists that analyze the results, and then we compare if they both had the same conclusion. If yes, we can go ahead, and then my signature as laboratory head to release the results for shipping. And then some other information of when the analysis times have been performed. All right, and this is the end of this counseling session. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope I cleared up any misunderstandings that you might have had. I did my best to explain everything. Do read through the booklet again. It will repeat a lot of the things that I've said, and I think it will make some things more clear. The ones that are scientifically very interested will find enough basis for research into the science behind the whole program. And I hope we made it very transparent on what scientific studies everything is based on, and that I've convinced you of the scientific basis of this program. I hope I have also given you a number of different options of how to use this program to your liking. Some people want to do it online, some people want to do it on paper, some people want to do it easy, others want the flexibility. So I think you've seen that you have lots of different options of how to use this program. And I think there's not much left to say. In case you do have questions, do contact us. We'll do our best to answer those questions, and also try to improve the text in the reports to make sure that future customers do understand it correctly. So please do get back to us. We like positive as well as negative feedback to improve our system in the future. And there's nothing left for me to say other than to wish you a lot of success with your nutrition.